Boom. All right. Okay, guys, thank you so much for showing up today for our webinar in June, our Mid-Atlantic Territory webinar. So just a couple things before I introduce Chris. As you all know, Chris and I have been sitting here talking. I've known Chris for quite a long time, so I'm excited about him speaking to us today. What I will tell you is in the chat, there is a link to some information that Chris has shared with us, but I'm going to ask you at the end of Chris's presentation, he is actually going to answer any questions that you all have. Please put the questions not in the chat, but in that Q&A little bar down there. So everyone should have that Q&A, the question and answers. And that way we won't miss any, and Chris can answer them at the end of the presentation. So I want to take this time to introduce Chris Daly. Chris and I, like I said, we've been working together for, gosh, probably over 12 years because we were both a part of the ALS multidisciplinary clinic in Centera here in Virginia Beach. So I've had the pleasure of working with Chris all those years. And I will tell you that he has been so helpful answering some of the silliest questions I could come up with. And he always is very polite and answers them. So Chris is actually an assistive technology professional, or what they call an ATP. He works for New Motion here in Chesapeake, Virginia, and he graduated from Randolph-Macon College. And Chris, you've been an ATP since about 1995.
Yeah, it truly wasn't a credential we had back then, but not until Medicare changed the guidelines. I think we had to become ATP somewhere around 2002-ish, 3-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. But yeah, I've been doing the exact same job and being in the practice of an ATP since about 94, 95, mid 94, I believe.
Good deal. Good deal. And once again, we have not aged a bit during this time. So
yeah, as you look at my bald head.
Yeah. So I asked Chris, we've had so many people ask about how do you get a power wheelchair? What are the things about a power wheelchair? So when I threw this idea up at Chris, he was more than willing to jump on board. So once again, put your questions in the question and answer. I am going to turn this over to Chris. Today's presentation is all about mobility and the process to obtain your own custom wheelchair. So Chris, I'm going to mute myself, hopefully stop talking before I mute myself, and hand it over to you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that, Jerry. Yes, we've had a long relationship and very, very nice to be part of that team. To share with you the process of getting a wheelchair, typically is when you decide that you feel you're ready. We always want to err on the side of getting it a little prematurely, just so you can get used to it, because it can be a lengthy and tedious process. Every insurance can be different. They all tend to follow Medicare's guidelines. So that's sort of what I've based this entire presentation on. So I'll obviously other odd insurances can have a little different nuances here and there, but they typically all follow Medicare's guidelines. So that's sort of what I based everything on. Really, with to start, whether you're in clinic or whether you're being followed by a different physician, you need to obviously let the physician know and have that discussion with them that you are interested in need of a power wheelchair. That process will be started by the physician, obviously preparing a prescription. The doctor always needs to do a face-to-face examination as well. And the face-to-face examination is typically where they will make a chart note solely in reference to the power wheelchair and the need for it. Discuss obviously date of birth, name, date of birth, diagnosis, mobility and positioning needs or issues. And that is typically what generates that order for us. That prescription is in. We need to have a prescription sent to us, typically for the eval. Every wheelchair order requires us to get an evaluation with a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. We have two different outfits here that do them. In the near future at the Virginia Beach Clinic, we are going to try to conduct those evals at clinic. It's going to be a sort of little trial. The OT is relatively new to the clinic, Sydney, and I'd asked her yesterday, and she said that would be, she would be willing to do that with my help. So it just will cut down the time frame significantly if we can do that. So that's our goal. We don't have equipment there, so that may make it a little difficult, but we have all the literature, and certainly we can allow people to see product if they need to. We can make those arrangements. So that's another thing coming up in the future, which would certainly help this time frame. So when the physician issues that prescription for the OT/PT wheelchair evaluation, we issue that to a couple of different vendors. As I said, Sentara has a location. They're going to have a second one when Sydney's new location is available over at Healthy Way, and also Adler Therapy Group. We also have had in the recent past, really as a result of COVID, we have the ability to come to your home and connect. We can connect remotely. If it's too difficult for you to get out to a clinic for an eval, we can always come to your home, or make arrangements for you to come to my office, whatever it may be. We can be flexible to make that happen. And at the evaluation, that's where we're going to discuss the options for the wheelchairs, the brands, makes, whatever, the power functions, what is necessary. And that's when typically when we get the eval set up with, say, the therapy eval center, we're going to be meeting with the PT or OT, depending on which facility it is, and myself. We discuss the entire needs of the wheelchair. We go over all those details, and the therapist is going to actually put that in letter form, justification letter form, which will be accompanying the prescription and our quote and all that to your insurance company down the road. Let me think, what else do I want to say about that? They do now have newer stipulations too, as in I just found out about these this last Friday. We have been in the past, always been able for someone with the diagnosis of ALS and PLS, that we could get multiple power functions at the start, rather than having to, and what I mean by that, power wheelchairs can come with tilt, which is where the seat and back stay at the same angle and at 90 degrees. And then of course it can be tilted in space. Recline is where the back angle simply opens up. Power legs is where the legs can be elevated for, typically you have to have like an edema or for positioning. And then also they have seat elevators. That's a different little discussion I'll have with the seat elevators, but we used to be able to get power tilt, power recline, and power legs on everyone's chair with those diagnoses. Now, guidelines have just came out, literally like last Friday, I had a webinar about it. They are going to not approve those just immediately, as in they're going to base it solely on what the recipient's needs are at that given time when the eval is done. So we can't anticipate any future needs. We have to only base it on what is the current need, as in, do they need tilt for pressure relief? Yes. Do they need recline? Typically you have to qualify for recline, you have to need intermittent catheterization, some other different positioning needs. For elevating leg rest, you have to have a history of edema or pain or whatever need to be for positioning. So that is a new hurdle we'll have to tackle. I think that's sort of a delay tactic or a financial savings for the insurance companies, but it's going to make it a nightmare for the clients that have a need that could change very drastically and very quickly. And then here we have to go through this whole paperwork process to get a new function approved and then ordered and then come in. And it's going to be very laborsome to add those things after the fact. It's a lot of labor involved to add them. So hopefully we'll get a better understanding of that and have a better grasp of it for the future needs. But that is the new ruling very recently. And so we will see how that goes. The letter, as I said, the therapist will obviously complete their letter based on your needs, how you live your life around your home, what you do on your daily basis, if you have any skin issues, if you have any positioning issues, and all that is addressed typically in the letter, so we can build really an understanding for an insurance person. We're trying to draw a picture in words of what you do need and what you don't need. Um, and we also have another form that we can use. It's called a functional mobility evaluation. It's a Houston Methodist form. It helps some of the therapists if they don't do the eval in a letter style form. This is a form that sort of touches all those bases. It has a lot of check boxes and little justifications for different items like tilt, recline, and those things. And it has a narrative at each option that we can also add any additional positioning questions and or any details, individual customized details about the patient on every item. So we're going to have that form modified to accommodate those new rulings that I was talking about, how we have to have separate individual justification for the tilt and the recline and the power elevating legs. So we're going to have all that added and edited on that form so it's ready to go. So after the eval is done, the ATP, myself, I actually am there making notes. I usually fill out an order form at the eval. And the wheelchair order forms they range 17-ish, 18 pages for a power chair. So there's a lot of detail involved on the order form. It allows us to customize anything we need. If we have to, sometimes we even can draw pictures, but my whole goal at the eval is to figure out every absolute piece of equipment that needs to go on the wheelchair to accommodate your needs, your comfort, your positioning, all those things. So, it can all come from 1 or 2 manufacturers, or it can come from 7, 8 manufacturers on one order, depending on which headrest you need, which cushion you need, which backrest you need, between a seat belt and of course the wheelchair, and batteries come from usually a different place. So we have pieces and parts that come from lots of places that we have to put together to make the best package for each person. It's because they're very individualized. So me on the order form, like that 17, 18 page order form, I email to the manufacturer, and I usually will, I usually highlight that it's for a diagnosis of ALS or PLS, and I get those quote backs immediately. They will get them back to me same day. If it's, if it's before noon, if it's late afternoon, I will certainly get them back first thing tomorrow, the next morning. So I have to compile those quotes from all the manufacturers, if they're multiple. PDFs, I upload them on a system that we use called ATP Desktop. And what it is simply a software where I can have all the documents, I can manipulate them and complete them like I need, whether I'm doing a home assessment, because I have to measure doorways and whatnot to make sure your chair can fit around your home. Can you get up 3 steps, or do you have any steps, or what's your floor coverings and all those things? Those things have to be addressed in my eval packet. And we have to, I usually have a consent form to say, obviously about getting seat belts, we put a seat belt on every chair. We require some type of anti-tippers on every chair. So those little things go, and that's part of my packet, as well as all the quotes. So I have the quote for, say, the wheelchair, the cushion, the headrest, and all those pieces. And then I upload all that to our system, and it's populated into our system. And we therefore generate all the documents that will go back to the physician for signature. One is it's called a physician signed work order, which is just a fancy prescription. It has every itemized detail of the wheelchair and every part that we're putting on it. And so those things will be addressed as well in the letter. They will be justified individually. And that's the whole goal. So it all sort of matches. It all will meet and match. So that prescription will go with the letter of medical necessity. All that is sent to the physician. Some insurances also require certificates of medical necessity, which is a separate form. It's sort of a crossover between a prescription and a letter of medical justification. But like Medicaid, they have their own certificate of medical necessities that have to have every itemized piece listed on their CMNs. So that's another document the physician has to sign. And those documents go there, they're completed, and they come back to us. And I say they come back to us, and hopefully they're all correct. That's a lot of the hard part. Insurance, sometimes it's not easy. Some of the certificate of medical necessities are complicated to fill out. They ask a lot of questions, and sometimes they're missed by the physician. They think they just need to sign them. And we try to highlight all the hot spots and what's needed to be completed. But just sometimes, and physicians are busy, sometimes they can do things in haste and it just doesn't come through clearly. But after we have all the documents back properly, that entire packet is sent off to the insurance company. Sometimes it's multiple insurance companies, obviously primaries and secondaries and tertiaries on occasion. And those things are submitted for approval. Usually within a week or so, we start to hear from some of the insurance companies. When we do get approvals, sometimes we get PIN letters or they will need more justification for something. So in that case, myself or my coworker will certainly shoot a note over to the therapist that did the evaluation and state that we need additional information. So we typically get that. We don't have to have the doctor re-sign that, but we can reissue that to the insurance company and get that back. So if they get the final approval, then the chair is ready to be ordered. We order the chair. Most of the manufacturers, the manufacturer we deal with, they accelerate orders in this situation. So one company is in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville, and another one is up in Pennsylvania or Ohio. And both of them are very good at getting chairs out quickly. When we place an order for a complex power chair, we usually get that chair within 2 weeks. Typically, they have about 5 days of manufacture time to have it ready in a box and shipped. And it leaves. It only takes a couple, 3 days to get here from 2 days, from, I believe, from Nashville and about 3 from the other location. But we usually have them within 2 weeks. And then, of course, we have they usually give us an ETA when we expect to receive it, or when they expect to ship it. And then we can calculate how much time it'll be. We know how long it takes us to put them together when they get here. So we try to pre-schedule delivery based on that estimated ship date. So we can try to make the process as quickly and clean as possible so we can get the equipment to the users who need it absolutely as quick as possible. So the chair was ordered today. We would probably receive an estimated ship date by tomorrow or something. And my coworker, Lauren is her name, my CCC, she would be calling to get that pre-scheduled so we could have our schedule already booked and already have the delivery planned to be there. And we have to have everything fall in place right, but we leave a little bit of leeway, about a day or so leeway. So if we have an issue, we can try to address those things. But sometimes we can have a little shipping delay. Sometimes we receive things damaged, just like with everything that comes in shipping. That's rare that they're damaged, but it happens. Sometimes they send the wrong thing. It just happens. One manufacturer, we recently ordered a bath chair for a little kiddo, different story, but ordered a size 1 everything, and it's a package. And we received a size 2 bath chair and a size 3 fabric that goes on it. So nothing was even useful. So we had to get an RA to return all that and get the actual correct size that we ordered properly. But manufacturers goof up too, but it's one of those things. I don't know that. I want to make sure. Let me see. I have a little thing here. Obviously, when the delivery comes about, we actually bring the chair to your position, to your home, whether you want to meet at our home, at our office, which is rare. We typically bring it to your home so we can fit in there, show you how it works within your home, show you how it charges, and go over all those things, how the positioning components move, and obviously can be adjusted. We have seating techs that deliver chairs, and they're also able to come back out if we need adjustments. When we need to add things. Of course, I'm involved as well on many of the occasions. It's just we sort of have roles sort of divided nowadays, where I'm doing all of my part and that we have the rehab techs doing the deliveries. But always, I'm able to help out when it's needed. If someone needs me to come, that can be requested, and I'll certainly try to make it available on my schedule to be there at the delivery. And I'll certainly still participate in all of the very complex deliveries. And what I mean by that is if someone's going to like ability drive or a foot drive, where you can drive with your foot, a joystick with your foot. Ability drive is where you actually drive with eye gaze. If someone's familiar and has had an eye gaze device, the ability drive is software that goes on there and some hardware that we put on the chair that allows the chair to be driven with your pupils, moving your pupils in a screen. I did have several. I'll make sure that email gets out to everyone. I have several links to like the manufacturers that we use, Permobil, Quantum, for power chairs. I have, some information, I believe, on cushions. I have some other information on shower chairs, on patient lifts, whether it be a Hoyer or another brand Hoyer patient lift. I think I had something on there for um, I'm not sure what else was on there, but I'll make sure that you get those just so it's nice so you can see that. I have the information on Ability Drive. I do know that. That's Tolt Technology. They have a nice little website that you can see how that sort of operates. The Savant headrest, I believe. It's a very nice headrest. It cradles the head well, and it has a strap that can come across the forehead, which is very helpful for folks with neck weakness, certainly if they're being transported in a car or van. It's hard to hold your head. They don't have a lot of good options to hold the head, but that one has a strap system. The Whitmire also, we can do what's called bilateral facial components. The rest of the headrest supports the rear of the head, and we have little bars that can come in with little pads that we can lock and spot to help hold the head to give anterior support to prevent your head from bobbing around. And you can use that certainly while you're in transit or whatever, or if you need to just moving around in the chair or anytime. And those swing away out of the way, so you don't have those. But those are little, they sort of stay in the way, where the Savant is nice to have the strap system, but they're not always for everybody. They might not be the most comfortable, but we want to make sure the chair is comfortable, appropriate, meeting your medical need and your comfort level. That's what we care. The chairs typically come with a foam style back pad. In many of my cases with folks within your population, we change that back foam in time. If someone ends up sleeping in the chair or being in the chair longer term, we go to what's called a Roho back pad. Roho is a brand of cushion that's made of 4-inch egg cells. They're all filled with air. They make a back pad with 3-inch egg cells, but same thing. It's the same thing, and it's just the most best for pressure relief back pad that we can make. It offers the best weight distribution. So anyway, it tends to be the most comfortable for folks, that are in their chair long term or even sleeping in that. It certainly is going to give them the best pressure relief, which we care. We know you can have weight loss and certainly bony prominences along your spine. We don't want to have anything rubbing hot or getting any pressure issues based on that. And let me think, did I miss anything else? But so just to recap, in a nutshell, it starts with a physician, discussing with a physician that you want a chair. And then, of course, the physician needs to conduct a face-to-face, which in a nutshell is saying why you need the chair and documenting that as a chart note that we have to have a copy of. Insurances are all requiring that, us to have a copy of that. The prescription is issued for the eval. The evaluation is conducted with a PT/OT, physical therapist or occupational therapist, and myself, and of course you. And that is conducted in either at your home, and we can do it virtually with the therapist, which is not as common now. It was much more common, obviously, the last 3 years with COVID, or at the therapy center. So we can do it either way, whichever works best for you. And insurances are still paying for the virtual eval, so that works out fine. But I will always be in person with you, wherever you are, so I can get proper measurements and discuss all the options with you and do all that. From that eval, I will compile all the quotes for the manufacturer, for the wheelchair, for the cushion, for the headrest, for the Ability Drive, for whatever else is needed on the chair. And with those quotes, actually will be uploaded into our system, from which we compile, and those will generate the documents that will be going to the doctor for signature, which is a detailed prescription, the certificates of medical necessity, if the insurance requires those, the letter that the therapist had written, and then that packet, when we get it back completely signed and completed properly, we send that to the insurance companies for approval. And after we get approval, the chairs are ordered. And then after the chairs are ordered, we get an estimated ship date. And from that date, we call and schedule the delivery day. And that's when the chair will be brought out to your home and fitted and show you how to use it and all that stuff. Certainly, you always have my number. When you meet me, I try to give you my number. So always keep that. I am your best source to reach. I may not answer you immediately, but I will get back to you as soon as possible. But you can always text me, call me, and I can help initiate whatever the issue may be, whether you need service, if you're having a service issue, or you're having a positioning issue. I certainly need to be involved with that anyway. If you something you don't like or whatever, certainly let me know. We can always work on things to get it right for you. If you anything else, but I can always initiate no matter what your need is about your wheelchair or other equipment that I get for you. I can always be your point of contact. And if it's not me, if it's a service issue, I can certainly get a note to them so they can proceed and get to you to make sure we get things right for you. That is the wheelchair process in a nutshell. Jerry, if you can hear me, is there something else you'd like me to chime on?
All right. Yes, yes. Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So I tell you, I was a little bit real disappointed to hear about the new Medicare guidelines. So,
Yes.
nothing like making something a little bit more complicated. So
That
I
is
do
ridiculous.
know, Chris, we have folks on this webinar that are from up in Ohio, down in
Sure.
South Carolina, all over.
Sure.
So I do want to say that I know that New Motion is, you work for New Motion. I know that they're all around. And the process that Chris said does not change no matter where you are. It's the process. So
Yeah, it is very general, yes. And
Yeah.
in our company wide, I mean, we harp on, because Medicare's guidelines are the same countrywide. So, and we base all of this solely on that. There could be some obviously nuances on certain insurances and certain little locations, but most insurances in time will be following suit with whatever Medicare does.
So I guess taking the new Medicare guidelines and sort of setting them to the side, what are the features that most people would need? I'm going to call them average, features that most people need. I'm not sure if that's a good term.
Well, like, I mean, everyone in a chair. I'm a paraplegic myself. I don't know if anybody knows that, but I'm a paraplegic myself, and I had to be in a power chair for 8 months at a time when I had each of my shoulder surgeries. I had both of them done, one in 13 and one in 15. So I got to live in a power chair full time for 8 months, and I had a much better perspective. And I mean, I already had it, but when I'm living it, it just comes to real fruition. So tilt obviously is for pressure relief. Recline is also, tilt and recline combination also gives you about a 30% better pressure relief. The recline with opening that back angle is just good for if you're going to be sleeping in the chair or resting in the chair. So it helps minimize transfers from chair to bed or bed to chair, whatever, so people can be comfortable in their home all day. Like if they're living with a caregiver, the caregiver may have to work. And, they're alone 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So they can be in the chair and they can manipulate, the chair, lay it flat, tilt back, recline. They can elevate their legs so they can really simulate being in bed. So that's 3 power functions there. The fourth power function that I meant to discuss as well, that I sparked my memory on, that is the seat elevation function. Medicare has recently, the only nice part of this is Medicare just passed the ruling and they are now covering seat elevators. However, we have not billed for any yet under their guidelines. It just started mid this month. I want to say a week or so ago, or June 3rd, 4th, somewhere in that ballpark. It's relatively new, so we haven't billed for it to see what they're going to compensate us for those. But at least they're now acknowledging that they are going to cover them, and they understand that it is a benefit, but it has to be justified in one of 3 ways. The benefit for a seat elevation is necessity for transfers, because it's always better to transfer downhill, whether it be to bed or to a shower chair, whatever. You can elevate the chair high enough to transfer down to a surface is always helpful. The other part is managing any ADL care inside the home, as in, are you cooking or preparing any type of meal for yourself to reach a microwave, to reach a cabinet, to get a plate, bowl, cup, whatever that may be? So if you need any elevation for that reasoning, that is another portion of justification. That's number 2. And number 3 is if people need to be able to raise their seat to floor height for proper communication, as in more eye-to-eye contact or whatever for visual and communication that way. So those 3 things are going to be the reasoning, and those are going to have to be justified individually on that eval with the PTOT then when that is conducted, to be able to get that approved. And we just don't know what approval means. They may approve it and pay $500 for it, which, it's about a $3,800 add-on to a chair. And fortunately, we've been able to offer that at cost, which is about $1,500 through either of the manufacturers. And of course, there have been also Team Gleason and New Motion, Permobil Foundation, and a couple other little things like that that can cover seat elevators for people, which they will still be in existence. So if it ends up, we can get half the cost from Medicare, that'll be great. We don't quite know how it's going to work out because it's literally brand new, and we don't have any results from how they're going to pay on those bills, but we'll see. But at least they're approving them nowadays. So we made a little roadway on that anyway. So that's a little bit of sunshine at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. And just to clarify, so everybody knows, the seat elevator just moves the seat
straight up and down. Yes.
Straight up and down to give you height.
That's right. One manufacturer goes 10, one manufacturer goes up 12 inches. So it allows you to really manipulate the seat in a position where you can get into any bed or whatever and get transferred where you need it.
So there is a question, but I've got a couple. You mentioned the Ability Drive, and could you just real briefly talk about some of the different drives and maybe when or what you would need?
Yes. So typically you drive with normally is a joystick. A joystick is a proportional drive, and it's the easiest and most it's just the most basic, but it's just great. It's proportional. No matter where you move the joystick, it will go that direction. And it's sort of like a gas pedal. The further you push it in distance, it goes faster. You have control of those speeds. So that's the easiest and basic. When people lose hand function or have limited hand function, then we have to find another way to drive. Sadly, in this population, we get a lot of, neck weakness, and the head is not always a good way to drive. But if it's an option, we have a lot of variation. So we can head arrest. A head array is another way of driving. What that is sort of a headrest. It's got 3 switches hidden in the pads, which you can't see, but they are proximity switches. So when you get your headrest in the proximity of that switch, it activates the switch and will drive a direction. So when you have that headrest, we get a little display. It's about as big as a cell phone, and that display will be facing your face, so you can see what function you're in. You'll have a switch that can allow you to cut the chair on, cut the chair off. You'll have a switch so you can change drive function to go from drive to seating functions, and then you use those 3 switches to be able to manipulate the chair. Whether you're going to tilt it or recline it, you can just use those switches. If you're going to drive the chair, you touch the rear pad is forward, you double tap it to go reverse, and right and left is in each of the switches on each side of your head. And that's how the head array works. And that is a proportional drive. It works very well, but it's not real common in this population because we just get a lot of neck weakness. That's the negative. So some people have, they lose function of their arms or upper extremities, and they have great function of their lower extremities, or not great, but they have very ample and good function of lower extremities. Therefore, we can use what's called a foot drive. They invert a joystick, and it's mounted into looks like a race car gas pedal. So you can stick your foot in it. And I've had several patients, a handful, that have really been successful and have used that over the years. It's not very common, but it is there. So it's nice, so they can drive with their foot. I had a gentleman that did that for a couple years, and you know who that is. So he was very successful with it. And I've had some other recent folks that have driven that way. So that is a way to do that. So the nice thing, we always want to stay proportional drive. It's just the best way to drive a chair. And that the foot drive is proportional because it's really a normal joystick that's on the chair. You're just pushing it with your foot. It's inverted, so you push more like a gas pedal. Like I was saying, gas pedals forward, and we can put it any direction you wish. Other drives, they can even have, I had a gentleman way back when, all he could move was his middle digit. He could move his middle digit about, let me get on dark, about that much. Just wiggle it just a little bit. And that was the only motion he had, period. He had been trapped. He had been in a hospital for 3 years. He had not been outside other than on a stretcher. And so our goal was to get him outside. And anyway, I got him a chair, what's called with that display that I was telling you about. It's literally like the size of a cell phone, and it shows you like your what drive you're in, it shows your speed and all that stuff, and also can show you what seating function you're in. We set his chair up on what's called scanning. So scanning, we set up the time frame of how long it goes. It would scroll between sorry, I'm getting dry. It would scroll between drive function and each seat function. It would go to tilt, then recline, then not power elevation, but power legs, and then back to drive one. So when it would get to the function he wanted, he could give it a nudge and it would go into that function to go into drive. And then it would give him a green arrow saying he's ready to go. And he could simply click his button. And if he were in the drive function, then it would give you an arrow going forward, an arrow going right, an arrow going back, and then an arrow going left. And it would just keep scanning those functions. And when he got on one he wanted, he could simply extend his finger and hit that switch and it would go. So he could drive the chair forward. You know, he could, when he wanted to pause and needed to go right, he could take his finger away and then it would go to right and he could click it to go right and the chair would turn right and he could stop it when he wanted to, aimed like into the elevator. But he was able to drive down the hall, go in the elevator, go outside. And the first time he had been outside in like three and a half years. So little things like that. It was a nice accomplishment for me, but it was a lifetime. It was a very big accomplishment for him, and it meant a tremendous amount to see how happy he was just to do that. And whether he ever did it again, didn't matter. He did it and he was happy and he could drive and move his chair around and do that all by himself. So that was an important thing for me and for him. So that is another thing that is possible. And then another most common is like the ability drive. The ability drive, like I said, if someone already has an eye gaze device, it has to use eye gaze, where it's following your pupils if on any type of speech generation device. If they have one, great. The software can be put on that device. It has to be a certain brand. I know it's Talk to Me, the Tobies, and I know there's another brand that I'm not familiar with the name real well. That can the ability drive can go on directly. If the person does not have a speech generation device or uses that for communication, we would get a tablet with the when we got ability drive for them. So they would have a small, like little, sort of like a fancy little iPad, but it's a Microsoft tablet, and the software would be on it. And of course, we have a device to hold that tablet in front of their face so they can actually operate it. And how it looks is just like looking in your computer screen. The camera is looking ahead of you and looking at your environment, and it puts like three little opaque, like an arrow going forward, an arrow going right, left, back. And then of course you can go to your seat functions and operate all those with that ability drive as well. But that's how that works. You're simply looking through your screen to see your environment and driving around your environment as you need. But that's about, in a nutshell, how most of the common drives that we do for folks within this situation.
Okay, thank you. And you can also sometimes put a drive and an attendant control on the back. Is that?
Well, we try to, they would be great to have one of those for everyone. Yeah. As people's needs change tremendously, they almost always are going to have a regular joystick. Of course, a caregiver could use that joystick to operate the chair, but it's hard to walk beside a chair and drive it. So we would love to, but insurances don't cover them. Just to put an attendant control on the chair. But the attendant control is just a regular joystick. It's more of a basic joystick that's mounted on the back of the chair for a caregiver that's walking or ambulatory to be behind the chair. They can operate seat functions if they want. We can move the seat function box back there, but they can drive the chair. They override control of the chair, so they can help. What I like it for is certainly manipulating the chair and say like a vehicle, like one of the transport wheelchair vans or any type situation, like in a bathroom, or if you're out in public and we're in a public restroom, they can be tight for anything, especially a large power chair. And because they're hard to see behind, you can't really see what's behind you, what you may bump, run into, or whatever. So it's always helpful to have an attendant control for those people that need it, or certainly for the people that may fatigue by 12 or 1 o'clock and, they need someone else to help them get around for the latter part of the day. So there are a lot of instances that the attendant control is very helpful and needed. But insurances, they just say they want to see it cut and dry. Okay, well, they say, well, we don't want to get an attendant control for Johnny if he's going to be driving the chair. Well, if he can't drive the chair, we want to get him a manual wheelchair. So I understand what they're saying, but they're not looking at the whole picture. And, everyone's different. So we always try to keep, when we get an attendant control back or in the loan closet, we sort of keep them and we use them well. We distribute them a lot, and we can add them to. We don't have them for every chair, but and one manufacturer, and they try to. Quantum does have a nice thing. If you get tilt and recline, they will put a free attendant control on it. So that's a good thing as well. So the manufacturers really step up to the plate and try to help us. They know the problems with insurances and how valuable those things are. So it's a good thing that they do that. And, we just have to, let them know diagnosis related that it's, if someone has ALS or PLS, and they graciously offer those at no charge when you're getting a, multi-power chair, like tilt recline and power leg. So it's very nice.
I'm going to jump into the questions that people have written.
Sure.
So the first person says, can you give any idea of cost after insurance? They have Aetna and they get their clinic through UVA.
Ouch. Good question. That's very more specific, and I would need to call your Aetna to know that. But typically, very typically, I'm basing it on Medicare, which is an 80% payer, and so with Medicare solely, it's 80%. Typically, Aetna is around that same type of thing, and they pay a little differently based on codes. Everything is coded the same, but they have a different way of paying for those. I believe Aetna is at 80-20, but I'm not sure. You could always contact your benefits number on the back of your card, and you want to go to durable medical equipment if they have that option on their phone system, and then they could sort of tell you what they would cover. The codes, it would be based on the power wheelchair code. The wheelchairs are called Group 3 chairs. I think it's KO861. I don't know. I'm not a code geek. I don't know those real well. So sorry. I can try to look it up real quick. But the Group 3 power wheelchairs is what it is, and it'll have a K code. I know it starts with a K. I think it's 08. I'll find it. I'm gonna try to go, but everyone is different. That's the problem. I don't know Aetna very well. I don't do a lot of that now.
Insurance is tough. So
Yeah.
the next question is sort of maybe along those same lines. She says, I'm currently in the process of switching over to Medicare. Most likely this will happen the end of August. I'll need a supplement insurance, and I'm wondering if it's better to have a 10% or 20% copay. The cost of this chair will help me decide if it's worth the additional monthly insurance premium for the 10% copay. Can you tell me the average cost of a chair?
The chairs are roughly 25 to 30,000 bucks, depending on what functions are on it. Just a rough number. It depends on what you're getting, but the chairs they all price almost within 200 bucks of each other, apples to apples, comparing like a Quantum to a Permobil to a whatever. They all price around the same with all the exact same features. And truly, with the chairs are coded, everything is based on a code. Like for example, with Medicare, even if we were charging $500,000 for the wheelchair, Medicare is only going to pay the exact same dollar amount because it's based on a code. So we know that. So the manufacturers know that as well. So they try to keep their pricing and whatever around those code prices, because it doesn't matter what we bill. Medicare is only going to reimburse the amount for the code. So,
okay.
But yeah, to answer that question, 10 to 20%, I would say, if you're talking about 10% of $25,000, that's 2,500 bucks. So, I would break that down into however many months. So a supplemental plan, I would try to get it to cover 20, because that means for everything you do with Medicare, it would cover the 20% that Medicare is not covering. So not just for the wheelchair, that would be a big ticket item, but all of your other stuff like copays for, I don't know how Medicare does for prescriptions and all that stuff, but anything else you may need that Medicare would cover, your doctor's appointments, it would still give you it would still eat that other 20% that you don't have to pay for the copays for physicians' offices and all that stuff. So I would try to weigh those things of how that, see which would be better for you if it's a huge difference in the premium on that insurance policy between the 10 and 20. Let's try to weigh that difference. But roughly chairs are going to be around 25, 28, somewhere in there, or under 30,000 bucks, depending on the ability drive is another like 8, 9, 10 grand on top of the chair. So it can be expensive.
So I have another question here. It says, hello, Christopher. I received my customized Permobil M300 with ability drive.
Uh-huh.
I'm also on a ventilator and use an 18-pound Ventec attached to the upper back seat. I'm
Mhm.
having difficulty with the front casters coming up when going up a 3-foot ramp. Do you
Yeah.
have any recommendations for mounting the ventilator at the bottom, like Steve Gleason's wheelchair? I love the ability drive, but when I am in direct sunlight, this is part 2. I
Right,
love
right.
the ability drive, but when I'm in direct sunlight, the eye gaze doesn't recognize my eyes. Do you have any suggestions? So that's a 2-part question there.
All right. So yeah, on the first part, the ventilator, yeah, that can be heavy. That can be a heavy unit. I'm not sure where the device is or what Gleason has his mounted on, but yes, they do have some other lower frame mounts for those. Another suggestion would be ask your provider. Your chair could have come with the standard shocks on the back. They can put a heavy duty shock on the back. That will help the chair from doing that, to support that extra weight going up inclines with that additional weight of the ventilator on the back. So that would be a question to ask. It would, your ATP could look that up on the order from the chair, and it's based on the user weight. I don't know where the cutting line, I think the cutting line's around 180 or 200, I'm not 205. I'm not sure where the cutting line is, but they put standard shocks on every chair, so it's a lighter duty. And then they put a heavier duty shock on the back for people like over 205 or 210 pounds, I believe, because it'll hold up to about 270 to 300 pounds. So we may need to put the heavy duty shocks on the back, would help resolve that problem.
So I'm going to jump in and ask you this about that. I've seen now, according to this, his vent is up high on the upper back. So
Yeah.
But who do you get the vent trays from that sit on the bottom of the back of the wheelchair? Who would that
I
go to?
haven't used those just because I'm afraid they'll interfere with the casters, but they do make them.
Okay.
I know that. I've not had a lot of ventilator, big ventilators back there. Like I've always seen the Trilogies, which is a small device. I mean, that doesn't add a lot of weight hanging on the back. So that's what I've seen ventilator wise. We used to have the LTVs, the big laptop vents,
Yeah.
and they had a metal cage that held those. And Permobil made a
Yeah.
very nice one. It locked on with 2 little eyelets you could release and take it off, but it had a rectangular cage. It was depth adjustable to accommodate different depths and whatnot, to hold the old LTVs. But I have not seen one. Permobil does have nice tracks on their seat rail, so you could put something there. But you got to think of this: if you tilt, it's going to be connected on the back of the seat, and it's going to run into your caster. So you can't add a lot in that respect to the seat rail, because it's going to hit. It can't be fixed. They usually they've had gimbaled vent trays, but those typically mount higher. There is a utility box that Permobil has that sort of mounts on top of those casters, but I don't know that that's meant to hold a ventilator. It's more to hold storage for medical supplies or whatever like that. I don't know what the weight capacity of that is, because I can't get those approved. So I've never had one on a chair. I've just seen them in on a demo or something. So I don't have a good solution for that with whatever that ventilator is. But to answer that question, I would pursue make sure that you have the HD shocks on the chair, number one. And if so, you can also tighten the attention on those shocks. Because I literally had to just do that for a patient of mine, same situation, different diagnosis, whole different story, but same thing. Going into her vehicle, it was tipping back a little bit and it was making them feel uneasy. So we're going to put the HD shocks on there to keep it from moving so much, even though they were appropriate for her weight. But this scenario, it's making her very top heavy and it doesn't feel safe. So we're going to put on the heavy duty shocks to keep the wheel from traveling as much on the rear. So when she goes up, it doesn't tip back at all.
Okay.
So in the second part of that, the only way to do that, to keep the sun out of your face, is to get some type of canopy. And I don't, there's one called a Sportbrella on Amazon, but you're gonna have to keep the sun out of your face, number one, and off your screen so you can see the darn thing. And whether moving it closer could help, but you're gonna have to have something to shade the sun from it. I know that's a common issue that I've had, and the only solution is to have some type of canopy or whatever to do that. The Sportbrella has to mount to I've not used it myself, but a family has one and they swear by it. I have it saved in my Amazon cart if that means anything. So I will get it one day when I get to be a big boy, because it would be very handy to have for me. But it is elongated and it's not real wide, but it's nice and elongated. So it would certainly shadow your eye gaze device. So I think that would be helpful. The problem is just finding a decent way to mount it. I think it comes with a little clamp. So you could clamp it on an arm pad possibly. I have not seen the hardware to know really quite what would be a good place to put it, but.
So basically it looks like I went on Amazon. Unfortunately, I can get on Amazon way too easy. It looks like it is actually an umbrella.
It is. It's
Okay, I
called a
was
sport
thinking
umbrella.
it was more of a canopy thing, but it is a true umbrella.
It's nice and it's slender and long, so it would really work well for someone in a chair or whatnot.
Okay, and it doesn't
Yeah,
cost all that much.
it's
Okay,
not very expensive either. It's not cheap. It's pretty cheap.
yeah,
So something like that would help shadow, and of course it wouldn't be bad to have for weather anyway. And she swore the quality was really nice, so that's a nice find.
okay. So then the next question is, do any of the ALS organizations help cover the out-of-pocket cost? So I guess that one's mine, Chris, unless you want to jump in on that. But
Oh, I'm gonna hand that one to you, Jerry.
yeah, thank you. So now I'm going to speak for the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We also have South Carolina, West Virginia, and Northern Ohio. But we do have some grants out there that you can reach out to your care service coordinator and see what may be available, what you need, and if there are any grants that would cover something like that. Okay. So then Will posted, okay, Will would like the link to the Sportbrella.
Okay.
So let me write that down because. All right, Will, I will send it because I found it on. Okay. So any other questions out there, y'all?
And was that clear? Did they understand about the shocks on the back of that chair? If they didn't understand that, I'll be clear so they know what to ask for.
That was Will. So I'm gonna.
Okay. So yeah, on the rear, on those rear wheels, it's called a mono shock, but they put two of those. It's got a spring. You can see a nice colored spring on it. That is what we want to change. So address that with the ATP. Those rear shocks on the rear wheels, they look like little shock absorbers is what they are. And it does have a dial ring, so you can tighten that ring to prevent those from traveling so far as well. But need to make sure that he has the heavy duty ones on there first of all, and if not, they can tighten those lock rings. It's hard to turn. It's a task. You have to unload the chair, as in unload the weight on the chair and turn that disc to tighten up those shocks, but that will help it so it will not tip so much on that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So really the last thing that I just want really quick, can you just sort of touch on, we've had some folks that have gotten their power wheelchair and for whatever reason, maybe have not used it. And then when it came time to use it, the battery's not working. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of keeping the battery charged or
Absolutely.
the whole battery thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. As a New Motion representative, they say to charge the chair every day, all night, every night. However, I'll put on a different hat as a user in what I do. I use that every chair has a battery meter on it on the joystick. So if it's sitting there and you're not using it, put it on your calendar and charge it every weekend, every Saturday night, whatever. So it stays charged. So you keep that up. No matter what, charge it every Saturday night. And I tell people that even if they're using it, because the batteries give you like a range of 18 miles. So roughly. So it depends on how much you've tilted, how much you recline, and how much you've elevated the seat, and all those things combine and eat up power. But still, they give you typically a range of 18 to 20 miles per charge. So I tell people to watch your battery meter. And if you use up half your battery in a week, don't go ahead and charge it on Saturday night. If you use a chair, if you're a heavy user and you use it, 2 days and you're already, like your battery meter's at midway, charge it. So I tell them that it's based on your needs. Like in my chair, you know, I used it, I would go to work and use my chair all day, and I could come home and I didn't need to charge mine, but every like 4 or 5 days. And that's when I was using it, you know, rolling around hospitals every day, and, you know, everything else that I was doing at grocery store, whatever I was doing every day. And I mean, I put a lot of miles on my chair. I think I have, I don't know, 2,600 miles on my power chair. So, so I literally used the fuel meter. I would charge it every whatever third day or whatever, and base it on your needs. But if you use it hard and you're out in the community a lot, and you're or if you're using wheelchair power for any device, use that battery meter. And those lights are pretty accurate. They disappear 1 or 2 at a time. If you need to charge it twice a week, do that. You put it on your calendar. But if it's something sitting there and you're not really using it yet, I get it. Just make sure you put it on the calendar, or just make it a habit. Plug it in at Saturday night, unplug it Sunday morning, and then do the same thing next Saturday. Whatever works for you, but it's got to be charged regularly, because if not, it can get too low, and then your battery charger can't pick it up. And those batteries are not cheap. They're around, I don't know, $200 a piece. So you're talking about a $400 or $500 problem if you let them get too low. Sometimes our service department has another charger that doesn't have a device on it, an inhibit device, so it can help pick batteries up that are lower than your normal battery charger will pick them up from. So sometimes that's a solution, but it doesn't always work. Certainly if a chair sat there 6 months and hasn't been charged, those are just too big paperweights. Those batteries are gone.
And
So
there's 2 batteries per.
there are, yes.
So
And
that's why it adds up so much.
that's right. And they're car sized batteries. They're deep cycle, which is really a marine type battery, but they are car sized batteries. They're big batteries. And yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah. So I do have some more questions. Speaking of the attendant controller, does every chair come with the 5-switch controller for caregivers to operate the chair?
Not all of them, no. Permobil has one that's got that they do have, like, it's really 4 switches. There's an up and down of each one. Quantum does have one as well. We picked that, but Permobil was without them during COVID, during that chip shortage. They didn't have them available for like 2.5 years. That has since been resolved back last November. They've had them since, and that comes with their chair on every chair. Quantums, it does come with one as well, type of switch, and it can be mounted for extra charge. They can mount it at the back, but typically it's either mounted on the opposite armrest or it's mounted on the joystick side of the chair, and that comes standard, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then this person says they missed the first 15 minutes. So you probably talked about this. Well, she wants to know if they can be emailed the steps on how to initiate the process. Do you have that little, like
Mhm.
the second time when you went boom, boom, boom? Do you have something like that you
I
could?
can. I have
Okay.
a nice, it really was just my notes, so I had something to follow, but I can send you that if you can see. It just says all about wheelchair process, and I'll be glad to send you that. It's a PDF. I can email that to you, Jerry, to share with
Okay.
everyone, as well as I have a cheat sheet for the face-to-face, which is helpful to have for your physician. If it's a physician that's not used to doing this stuff, it's sort of a cheat sheet. So it's a recipe, so the doctor can go and make sure that they write the correct stuff in the chart note. Because of course it's going to have your name and date of birth and your weight and your diagnosis, because it's you. But still, those things want to be mentioned in the chart note. And then of course your diagnosis and the reason what you need the chair for, or the eval for, and why you need a wheelchair. Whether you're stumbling or having difficulty walking. But I have that cheat sheet. I'll be glad to share with you as well. I don't know if that was with
me.
me.
Send it to me.
I
I'll
will
send it out to the care service coordinators, because especially that cheat sheet that you just mentioned might be real valuable for the folks who aren't going to a multidisciplinary clinic or seeing a neurologist at, not in a clinic environment.
Absolutely. And that's common. I mean, we're fortunate to have a nice clinic here, but people that are a little too distant to get to a clinic, they're just maybe seeing their PCP or whatever. And it's just helpful. So because that's a hang up, if paperwork or the chart note's not done correctly or whatever, then they have to go back to the doctor and get them to do it again. And it's frustrating for everyone. So I like to have that. People that need a chair, they can sort of have a little recipe, like I said, a guideline give the physician a copy of it so they can do it right the first time, because they're not used to doing it. It's not a common thing they do, but Medicare requires that, and all insurances require it now. But
okay.
absolutely, I'll send you that.
So here's what I'm gonna do, y'all. Once I get the information from Chris, I will send it out to all the care service coordinators in the whole entire territory. And they can then spread it out. I would suggest that you reach out to your care service coordinator and say, hey, make sure I get this. I'm looking for it. That way we won't miss getting it to you. Or if not, you can shoot me an email, and it's jeri.pro.s as in Sam, @als.org. All right, so that's all of our questions. Chris, I really, really appreciate you doing this.
You're very welcome. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it was. I do think it was. And I want to share with everybody, for July, our topic is Introduction to Home Care for Patients with ALS, and it's going to be put on by the Maximum Healthcare team. So we've already got July ready to roll and heading toward August. So once again, Chris, thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your care service coordinator or any of us. And y'all have a good afternoon. Thanks, Chris. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.